Good morning. So welcome to another session. Today we're going to be talking about evaluating information. The advent of Web 2.0 has made it super easy to both create information but also misinformation. So as we've discussed, it's a very democratic form of expression, and the responsibility lies with you individually to determine if the information you find is both accurate and also if it's something that you should or would use in making a decision. We're actually today going to be learning about a system that you personally can apply to any piece of information. It's pretty awesome. But this system is going to allow you to assess whether or not you should or would use this information. So it has a very funny acronym, and you might have heard it already, but just in case you haven't, it's called the CRAP acronym. I know, work with it. My freshman students always get the biggest laugh out of the fact that, Professor Klein said CRAP, and yes, I did, with full confidence. So the acronym actually stands for currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. And we're going to break those down into more bite-sized segments. So within currency, essentially, that is the timeliness of the information. Does your information need your question that you have in your head that you're trying to answer, by performing the search or looking for information and stuff? Does your information need require current information, or will all the sources be satisfactory for this particular situation? Additionally, that's going to allow you then to look for where the information is posted or published. Also, what you want to look for are dates, and make sure that the dates of the facts actually correspond with accurate dates too. Oftentimes, currency, if you're looking at websites or blogs or things like that, you can assess the date by scrolling down to the bottom of the page, and they might have like a page last updated segment. They might actually have the date embedded in it. It could be at the top of the document or the screen for the posting, whatever it may be. But really try to suss out where and when that content was last updated or published to. Now, relevance, that's the R of our CRAP acronym. That is the importance of the information for your particular need. Essentially, does it fit? Does the information you're looking at fit your information need? Is it relevant, or is it something completely off track? And one way to determine this is by asking, is the information at an appropriate level? Okay, so think about that for a second and stuff. Is it too basic for your investigation into, researching the best type of cold brew coffee? Is it, satisfactory for trying to find a vet for Porter, who you can see in the background there? It's a couple of different elements that come together to determining if the relevance of this information is going to allow it to satisfactorily answer your information need. And something else to think about. With that information you have at your fingertips, if you determine that it might or might not be relevant, would you make a decision off of that? Is it relevant enough to authoritatively make that decision? Okay. And I slipped in a word there. I used the word authority because that actually is the next letter of our acronym, authority. Who's the source? Who created that information? Who are the authors? Who's the publisher? Are they qualified by expertise or personal experience? Both of them can serve as authority control within this segment. Or can you not find any information on the authority of the creator of the content? Even worse, and this happens actually a lot with online information, is there no indication as to who the creator of the information is? There's no author, there's no credential, there's no organization, etc. If you can't find a creator of the content, that's a really big red flag for you as you're going through and thinking about your information need and what types of information are going to be satisfactory for producing a decision off of that. Then accuracy. Okay, Okay, that is the next letter of our acronym. And accuracy speaks to the reliability, the truthfulness, the correctness, so to speak, of the content. Is there evidence? Okay, where does the evidence come from? Are there citations or links to the original facts? Can you trace it back? Can you even verify the information? And then also, how is that quality of writing? Okay, sometimes that can be a really big red flag. You're making a decision based off this. If the quality of writing is incredibly poor, there's grammatical errors, syntax errors, it looks like it was written by someone who is still in grade school or elementary school or even high school, I would be very, very cautious with that. But that's a determination that you, as a responsible adult in a democratic society, need to make. And the last letter of our CRAP acronym is P. That's the purpose element of it. What is the reason that this information even exists? Okay, is it to inform? Is it to teach? To entertain? To persuade? You know, why is it even there? Who's the intended audience of that? What's the purpose for it? Is it intended for grade school students or middle school students, or is it intended for an academic or a professional audience? Is it intended for the general public? Is it intended for a specific audience, nurses, doctors, lawyers, whatever it may be? And are the intentions of that information clear? That's a really tricky one at times. And also to determine, is it an argument statement or is it an opinion piece? Those serve very different audiences and very different purposes too. And within the content that you're reviewing, does the creator of the information, the author, do they acknowledge any biases? A favorite scenario that I like to do this is, for example, if it was a research study, was the funding provided by someone? You know, was there a hidden agenda to have the results come forward or to yield a certain positive result because, you know, funding was provided in part by Starbucks, and so I should probably be using Starbucks cold brew in my mornings, which I'm not, but that's a whole nother story. So a device that we have to actually assist with this process is something called a matrix, okay? And the matrix is going to look a little like this. Let me see if I can get in close so you can see it. There you go. It is linked to your Blackboard tab, okay? So this page right here is essentially your instruction sheet. And behind that, you have a lovely worksheet that has segments for you to fill in your name, who's the author of it, what type of resource is it a news article, whatever, journal article, is it a website, the date of it, and you can just kind of follow through all the way down. And we're going to revisit this in just a few seconds, but first we're going to do a modified resource. Now, keep in mind the full CRAP matrix is linked on the Blackboard site on the left side navigation pane, okay? So you can access it at any point in time. From here on out, if an assignment does require the CRAP matrix, I am also attaching it to the assignment link. But let's step back for just a second and think about the types of resources that we've been looking at so far, because we've been talking about news resources and we've also been talking about online resources. So, let's see if I can do this and have it work. This is my Vanna White persona. Obviously, nothing at all like her. I should probably stay in academia. But for the purposes of this, we're just going to take a quick walk through this process and kind of step through some of the essential elements of it. So, for news resources, who are the authors? Okay. In news resources, the author is typically a journalist. Okay. They have some experience, hopefully, in conducting investigative journalism. You know, they are not necessarily subject experts, but definitely a certain degree of expertise is contained within them. They might have been working the crime beat for years. They might have been doing the metro section or the business section, etc. So typically for news sources, it's going to be a journalist. Okay. Then for within newspapers, who's the intended audience? The public is the intended audience, okay? Newspapers are written to inform, they were written to present facts and so forth. And that's really important in this process. We saw within the news clip or the video clip, all the king's men and so forth, that vetting process that took place. And that really links us into the next one, the vetting process. News is fact checked. Okay, there's some really good content out there. All the King's Men, we saw that video clip. If anyone wants to see the role additional content, there's a Netflix, HBO, Amazon, not quite sure which one it is. I think it's Amazon. There's a series called Good Girl Revolt, or Good Girls Revolt. And basically that is not only from a feminist perspective, but also from a historical perspective. It shows the incredible detail of fact-checking, verification, etc., that went in behind the big news sources in the 60s and 70s. It's actually a really interesting series if you have time to look at it. But, you know, the editor, in news sources, content is fact-checked by the editor. It's not going to go to press. It's not going to be printed if we can't find the sources, if the sources won't go on record, etc. You know, because they have a responsibility to ensure that the content is true, accurate, etc. and stuff. And we see sometimes, not very often, but that retractions will be printed, you know, if they discover. And that's because they're held to the standard of authority, of control in the content that they produce. The next element on it is, where does the resource live? This is interesting. This has shifted a lot. For news sources, the resource lives in print. It lives in online. You can find it on the internet. It lives in TV. It lives on the airwaves, whatever it may be. But it lives in a variety of locations and places. The next piece is, where can you access it? For news resources, obviously, it varies. Nowadays, it's at your fingertips. Everyone has a smartphone, or a lot of people have smartphones, internet connection, whatever. So it lives on, essentially. There are archives if you want to go through and look at the historic print content of it, if you're doing an investigation into the development of the New York Times, etc. But really, the resource lives in a variety of places. It's not isolated or limited to just one. And for currency, is the information current on news sources? Yes, that's one of the hallmarks of them. News is typically current. It's breaking news. It's relevant. Your editions and so forth always have the date associated with them. It could be as early as the morning edition or the evening edition, etc. Additionally, is it authoritative? That ties back to the fact-checking and vetting process for news sources. Typically, news sources are authoritative. Now, keep in mind, that has changed a lot. News has bias now, and you really have to look for unbiased sources. Think about Fox News versus CNN News. Think about, you know, some of these alternative news sources that are out there. There is bias within news, and so you need to be very cautious and careful as you're going through and selecting the type of news source that you use. Is it authoritative? Yes, news typically is very authoritative. You can find the credentials of the individual who's using it. You know what their history is with the organization, or the professional history, their educational history, etc. Typically for news, nothing goes on without some form of a byline that you can then trace the authority of the individuals who created it. Is it accurate? For the most part, yes, it is accurate. That's one of the hallmarks of it. That's part of the fact-checking, the vetting, etc. And then what's its purpose? News purpose is to inform. At times, it is also to persuade. Think about editorial pieces or op-ed pieces, you know, where the creator or submitter is providing an opinion, etc. So there are many options when it comes into this process. Now let's go through and look at the same exercise for websites, okay? And these are 2.0 websites. So starting with, who are the creators? Anyone and everyone. That's one of the beauties of this process, is that the Web 2.0 allowed everyone to be a creator. They allowed them to disseminate the information irregardless of what their credentials are. Okay, who's the intended audience? Sorry, I have to switch sides because my hand's tired. Who's the intended audience? in this context, the intended audience is the public. It's anyone and everyone also. And so that's kind of a fascinating thing. We have the same audience. It's intended for dissemination to the public, but its reach is vastly different, okay? Now, what's the vetting process? Let's see if I can do this without messing it up. As we've seen, especially in the videos and in the previous YouTube recordings and so forth, there's no vetting process. Anyone can post content. Anyone can go ahead and, disseminate that information, edit it, or so forth. Think about how many times the Wikipedia entries are edited, whatnot. There's no vetting. You, as a responsible citizen in this country, have to be cognizant and aware of the fact that that information might or might not be vetted. Some of it is, some of it's not. It all depends. The next one that we have is, where does the resource live? Okay, Web 2.0 lives online, period. Okay, it's not coming anywhere else. It's not in print unless you print it to a printer, but there's no other form of distribution. It is a purely electronic or cloud-based process. Then we have, how can you access it? Obviously, right? You're going to access it through the internet, and hopefully you all can see this. And that ties into the next thing. Because it's on the internet, establishing currency is kind of a hit or miss process. That's really where you're going to have to look for those dates on the bottom. They might or might not be there. Sorry about that, Porter, hush. Might or might not be there. So currency is kind of a questionable content, and you're going to need to assess that as you're looking through the individual content. Then next on the list is relevance. Okay? How relevant is that information? Once again, that's you needing to make a decision in that process. It might or might not fit your information need. That's a tough one. So, and how you're going to do this, once again, is looking at it. Is it the information at the appropriate level? Is it geared too low? Is it geared too high? And also, are you confident making a decision off of that information that's being presented? Okay. Then we have, is it authoritative? Can you find out who created it? For Web 2.0, once again, you might or might not be able to make that assessment. That's kind of a question mark as you go through. And then, of course, accuracy. And then finally, purpose. Once again, accuracy could be hit or miss in Web 2.0 content. Each situation, each information need that you have is going to require you to assess that. And your answer to this could be different each and every time. Sometimes it might be yes, sometimes it might be no. And then, of course, the purpose of information in the Web 2.0 context. It could be to inform, it could be to persuade, it could be, the sky's the limit. It could be to entertain. We see a lot of that out there too. It could be any variety of reasons, but that's up to you to assess as you look at it, as you evaluate it. And so Web 2.0 content must be evaluated very critically. We know the rise of fake news has caught a lot of people unaware. We've seen some serious repercussions from it. But once again, using a matrix kind of like this is going to allow you to more accurately evaluate kind of what the purpose and intent of the source is as you go forward. So this allows us, just with news sources and Web 2.0, to kind of see how this content is both similar and different depending on what you're using it for. So, pardon all of my orange stickies. What that does then is that actually opens up this course then for our first homework assignment, okay? And once again, for our first homework assignment, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think you're going to enjoy it. It is very simple, okay? But I want you to think about it critically. Do not rush through this. Basically, I want you to dissect the website virusmyth.com. Okay, the link is contained in your homework assignment, and essentially pick it apart. Okay, you're using that one source. You're going nowhere else. This is the only piece of information you have in your fingertips to help your friend assess an information need, okay? In this case scenario, which you'll read in your homework assignment and stuff, you'll find out that a friend of yours has a very serious medical condition, and using this one information source, LIS1010Sum18EvaluatingInfo, you're actually going to go ahead and use the full CRAP rubric, which has all the information. It's going to guide you step by step through the process, and you're going to fill, you can see my post-it notes to the back of this, you're going to fill out the CRAP rubric with all, can I stress all, the required information, okay? Fill this out completely. It's in the, currently, what you're going to do, it's in an Adobe fillable PDF document. Download the PDF, save it to your computer, fill it all out, fill all the blanks out with all the required information, save it with your name and the homework one, whatever naming convention you want, and then resubmit it through Blackboard, okay? So that's going to be your first assignment. You're actually going to submit 2 documents. You're going to fill out your homework sheet 1, and you're also going to fill out the CRAP rubric. I need both of these documents back. Excuse those yellow post-it notes. I need both those documents back. That is a pretty firm requirement with it, because it shows 2 different processes of thinking, okay? And there are different questions associated with each of them. This is just a starting point for us to become very familiar with the CRAP rubric and how it can be used in a variety of different ways. I must inform you though, by the end of the semester, you're going to be so sick of the CRAP rubric. I'm sorry, but guess what? Because you're sick of it and because you think you can do it in your sleep, that actually means you're familiar with the tool and the resource then, and you'll be amazed, hopefully, at how that actually kind of informs your thought process as you go forward after the semester is over. And I have had students come back to me like, I hated it when I was doing the CRAP rubrics, but I have used it in a variety of situations after the course concluded. And to me, that's a really powerful thing. We learn by knowing, we learn by doing, and repetition of the doing, such as the CRAP rubric, merely reinforces the transition of that skill set from short-term memory into long-term memory. So hopefully you have a wonderful weekend and that this homework assignment and utilization of the CRAP rubric are interesting and engaging to you. I'll be very interested in your comments concerning the LIS1010Sum18EvaluatingInfo website, and looking forward to our next time. So please, once again, have a fantastic rest of the day. Get started on your homework assignment. Excuse me. If you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I will be checking emails throughout the course until the due date of the particular assignment. And actually the due date for that, for homework 1, is next Wednesday. Okay? So till then, take care.